Normally it's backwards, right? You get in shape for summer. I do it the other way around. But we are looking today at part 2 of our Us and God series. And again, this is a topic that to me has become sort of, sometimes you come to terms or you come to a place in life. I'm 26 years old, so this is probably going to happen often. And as you're younger, it's probably going to happen more and more. But I've come to a point where, because I spend so much time alone, because I spend so much time in front of a computer working or studying or reading, I started thinking about how can my Christianity, how can my faith, how can I use it? How can I use it on a daily basis? How do I not? It's sort of like books sometimes, right? For school, I said I don't want to have to just have Christianity with me when I need it. I don't want to have just Christianity with me on Sundays because I'm a teaching pastor, or on days where I get invited to help at a funeral or a wedding. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do. I started thinking to myself, how do I do this on a daily basis? How do I do this on a daily basis? And last week I remember I talked about how in part 1 I said God made us. He created us. His motivation or his reason for creating us was so that we can display Him. When the Bible says we were made in God's image, it basically says we were made so that people can see what God is like through human beings, through the physical body. God is spirit, and I don't want to dive too deep in that. So God is spirit. He doesn't have a body. He's not like me and you who have eyes. I know that's hard to understand, and that's why I don't like to get into it, because I have a hard time understanding it. But He makes us in His image, in His likeness, in order for us to display who He is. And then sin corrupts us. I talked a little bit about that, and I said the cool thing about it is that though sin corrupted us, God Himself provided the redemption plan, which was His Son Jesus Christ on the cross. So today I want us to look at this topic of chosen, this topic of so last week we concluded, or we saw, that God made us so that we can display who God is to the world. And then sin dropped us, and then God provided a redemption plan. And today we're going to look at the topic of chosen. There's two extremes. There's two extremes that view this differently. So some people view as there's a group of Christians that think that that God puts His eyes on us, but we respond to Him, that we come and we choose Him. And then there's a side of there's a group of Christians that believe, no, actually you are completely unable to choose God. He has to choose you. And so I'm sort of more on the side of says, I think God has to choose us, because I don't know, even in Scripture, when Isaiah talks about how each one of us kind of runs our own way. And if you think about your life today, if you think about it in regular terms, it is probably true that all of us, most of us, most of the time, are inclined to live our lives apart from the picture of God. And this is normal. This is almost like natural. This happens not by chance. This happens because we are of a fallen nature. And so I'm more on the side that thinks God has to choose us. God has to awaken our hearts and pick at our hearts and turn on a switch so that we could be responsive to Him. And so I decided we're going to look at this second part called chosen. And if we go to the next slide, we're going to look at the scripture. The scripture of this is basically a narration of when God decides to anoint David to be Israel's next king. And this is a God choice. This is why I believe, this is why I think, and I'm more inclined on God has to be the one that initiates contact with us. God is the one that chooses us, because you see the pattern of God doing that all throughout Scripture, Old Testament and New Testament. You see God meeting people. He's the one that initiates the contact. And in the Old Testament, when it comes down to choosing Israel's king, He does the same. And so I'm going to read this passage with you guys. And And then we'll take a look at 3 points that I want to make. Before we read this, I just want us to, I probably should have done this at the beginning, but I want us to take a moment to pray for sort of what's going on in our nation. I don't know if you turned on the news. There's a very, throughout the weekend we experienced a high tension of racism happening in Virginia. And I think we can pray for that today. So let's bow our heads. Let's pray for this message, and let's pray for just our country. God, in this moment of time, Father, the fact that we get to be here, the fact that we are alive and we are in this place. I'm fully aware that God, we couldn't give ourselves lives. We couldn't have provided everything that we needed to be alive right now for ourselves. We couldn't provide the oxygen. Oxygen it's there. It's provided by you. God, we also know that the fact that we think coherently, the fact that we can, our brains are functioning the way that they are, and our bodies are doing what they're doing inside of us for us to be able to physically be alive. We have very little saying in some of these things, and yet you allowed us to be here, alive and well. And Father, this moment as we acknowledge just your being, your wholeness, we want to lift up our prayers for just this country, God. For the many people who are on the attack mode in the racial tension, I just want to pray for them, God. This act of evil, this demonic things that are going on, that people go out in the streets and organize themselves to shout and yell these horrific things against other racial groups. And I just pray that you would heal that. And I also pray for the oppressed, for those who are, in this case, perhaps African Americans that feel it the most. Just pray for them, God. I pray for comfort. I pray that we would be peaceful in our responses and not engage in altercations that could continue to end people's lives. So I just pray this, God. I thank you for the opportunity to be able to minister at a church where it's a different ethnic group, it's a different background. And I can do this every Sunday, God. And I've been loved and appreciated and invited in by this group of Indonesian family, this church that has so graciously welcomed us in. And I just thank you that in my heart too, God, you have made room for me to bring them in as just a blessing and a people that I love and care for, God. And I just pray that that feeling of unity would be awakened all across the U.S., especially in those red states that are pretty rough right now. So we join in on the prayer that many people are doing, and that is, God, that you would bring reconciliation, that you would bring healing to this country, that we cannot continue to meet these horrific acts with additional violence, that we would be peaceful about this. And I know that's easier said than done, God, but I pray that supernaturally your Spirit would work in our hearts. I just pray for this moment, God, as we look at this topic of chosen. Let us see you in this, Jesus. We pray this. In Jesus' name, amen. So I'm going to read this to you guys. In the same way, all 7 of Jesse's sons were presented to Samuel. But Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen any of these." Then Samuel asked, "Are these all the sons you have?" And Jesse says, "They're still the youngest, but he's out in the fields watching the sheep and goats." "Send for him at once," Samuel said. "We will not sit down to eat until he arrives." So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes. And the Lord said, "This is the one, anoint him." So David stood there among his brothers. Samuel took the flask of olive oil he had brought and anointed David with the oil. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day on. Then Samuel returned to Ramah. So this is an episode where God decides, I'm going to choose the next king for Israel. The interesting part is what we don't read here is, or what we don't see here is the fact that God, there was already a king. His name was King Saul. But he's just going sideways. He's just making bad decisions, bad decision after bad decision. And the thing about it is, here's a whole nation, God's chosen people, Israel, who in the long term would be hurt greatly by the decisions made by this king. And so God decides, I'm going to choose my own king. There's a need. There's a need. We need a ruler for this nation. And so God decides to take it upon himself to choose him. And if you notice, David's not doing anything special. David's just working. David is living an ordinary day. Out in the field, right, to us, put it this way, David was just out in school, just hanging out, you know, playing around with a spinner, just hanging out. There's nothing special. There's nothing special about David, or so we see here. The only thing we read about him that kind of describes him is the fact that he was dark and handsome. And that he had beautiful eyes. I mean, but what does that have to do with being a politician, being a king, right? You kind of think about him like, okay, that's a cute detail. But for being a king, for becoming a ruler of a nation, for running a program, running a whole army, running a whole economy, there's nothing about being dark and handsome that's going to help you. Right? And then God decides, yeah, but that's who I want to choose. And so God decides to choose someone like David. And the only thing, this is why I'm inclined to think that God is the one that does the choosing without having any pre-reasoning for it, is because we don't see that David is doing anything great, anything special. It's not like he's waiting on God. We don't see that. We just see simply God having the initiative to send someone like Samuel to go and choose a king, and it happens to be the youngest out of 8 brothers, right? 7, and then plus him, that's 8. He's the youngest. He's just out in the field. Some people say he was forgotten by his dad. I tend to think that's not the case. I think he was just out in the field. You know, maybe the brothers were out in the field earlier and he could have woken up late and decided to get there late, and that's why he's out in the field while his brothers aren't anymore. So there isn't anything special, and yet God decides, I want David. Why? I don't know. God just chose to be with David, or to pull David out. And so we're going to see, point number 1 here today is this: your faith story with God is a result of God's choosing of you. So the reason why you're in this family, the reason why you are at this church, the reason why you are aware of who God is, had very little to do with your saying, and had absolutely much to do with what God wanted. God just decided, you know what? I want Isa to be a part of this church in Monrovia where on Sundays he's going to hear about Scripture and he's going to be taught about God. I wanted someone like Josh to just be there every Sunday and hear. This is God's choosing. Our faith story with God is a result of God's choosing us. He's the one that started it. He's the one that pursued you and wanted you, and through a whole bunch of events, even brought me here, and here we are talking about this topic. And that is solely because God, for whatever reason, guys, wanted to choose you or wanted to pursue you. There's nothing we really do to motivate God to make himself real to us. There's so many places in the world, and I know that's kind of hard to kind of grasp or to kind of see like the deepness in that, but there's so many places in the world where God is just completely unknown, and no one's even trying to make God known. There's so many people that grow up perhaps in parts of Central America, South America, Asia, that God would just never be a part of their picture. They will never know that there's this creator that has a story to tell or has a big picture plan, because no one's out there talking about it. And so for us, I mean, here in the States, we get to hear about God all the time. Some people share God in a very clear and easy way to understand. Some people try to make it more complicated. I was just at at a camp this whole weekend, and there was a lot of people there that were just hurt by these very hardcore, poorly ran churches that were just detrimental to society, not just detrimental to families, but just to society, the way that they were doing things. And so there's a lot of people there that were hurt, and I heard a lot of stories of people who were just frustrated and were really thinking like, you know what, I might be done with God. I might not want anything to do with God anymore. And the reason behind it was really what they had experienced in the church. And so remember, guys, our faith story is just a result of God's choosing of us. He wanted to make himself real to us. And here we are, having this interaction with him that some days is higher than others. Some days it feels like it makes sense. Some days it might feel like, what's the whole point? But here's the second point of this. Your faith story with God connects to God's big picture plan for the world. And here's God's big picture plan for the world. Even before he made the world, God loved us and chose us in Christ to be holy, to be set apart, to be special, to be dear, to be purposeful and without fault in his eyes. Now you think about that and you're just like, God, why would you do that? Why would you do that? And God says, because I love you. And just because that's what I wanted to do. So before he creates the world, God loves us. And then he decides, oh, actually, though there's sin, though there's absolutely no reason for me to provide redemption for you guys, in Christ, I'm going to let Christ die, rise again, and then because of him, in him, you will be declared completely faultless. But Kristen, I sinned all week long. Yeah, but in Christ we're completely found faultless. We are perfect in his eyes, not because of our perfection, but because of what Christ did for us, and us being adopted into the family. So remember, your faith story with God connects to God's big picture. His big picture is, I want to redeem the world. I want the world to be with me. I want them to be my people. I want to be their God. And this is how Revelation ends. I love the book of Revelations. The dramatic parts are a little scary. You're like, dude, if all that's going to go down, I hope I'm not here for it, or I hope I'm just watching and not living through it. But it all ends like this. In Revelation chapter 22, he says, basically the big conclusion of this whole, of the whole story of Scripture is, God creates a brand new world. Those who are saved by him are part of that new world. And he says, and the conclusion is, and God will be there, and he would be their God, and those people would be his. And the conclusion of it all is, God made us to be with us, and for us to be with him. And because that got corrupted, and that is, we clearly live in the broken side of that plan. But God says, I'm still going to provide a solution. And my big picture is, I want the world to be, the people in the world to be with me, and I want to be with them. And so he makes this possible. And we see that in David's story because, again, the one that initiates the plan, the one that starts it all, is God, and it's not David. And here's it. Here's where we take it home. Here's where we're spending the most time. Your faith story with God will always fill a need. And this is why I think, this is what makes me realize that, yeah, that's right. My Christianity doesn't have to be a Sunday thing. It doesn't have to be a Sunday thing. It doesn't have to be a I'm alone in my room all the time, just being with God forever thing. It's an interactive thing. It's something that you go out and do. It's something that you go out and be a part of. So God has an overall plan, the big picture plan, which is to redeem the world. And then there's a lot of needs right now. You look around and you're just like, okay, there's this thing happening in Virginia. I saw so many reactions from it. And I thought about it and I was like, well, I cannot be an additional... I cannot be an additional log in the fire. I cannot promote hatred. I cannot promote an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I can't do that. When Jesus says, if someone baffles you on one cheek, you turn the other. Even though that's hard to think about, even though that's, for me, it's like, yeah, but I want to punch back. But that's with my master, and he has a reason for that. And so there's always going to be a need. And Titus, in the book of Titus, or the letter to Titus, written by Paul, we read this. Our people, and this is Paul giving instruction to Titus, who was a pastor, who was pastoring a young church, a new church. This is still going on in just a few years after Jesus' resurrection. And he says to him, our people must learn to do good by meeting the urgent needs of others. Then they will not be unproductive. I think about it, it's like, okay, so what's the big deal? Why should the church be funded? Why should people give to the church? Why should the church gather? Why should the church pay the bills so that the lights can stay on and we can have cool AC here? Why should we do all this? Why should I prepare every Sunday? Why should Austin come and help us out with the keyboards? Why should my wife sing? Why should there be people in there taking care of Lucas or Mateo as I'm sitting here teaching? Why? What's the point of all this? Here's the point. That God created us in His overall sovereignty, in His big picture plan. He created us so that we could be eager to do good things that would meet urgent needs. And this is why I say there's needs everywhere. All you have to do is stop and think. Stop and look around. And you'll start seeing that there's needs of people. There's people that feel like they have no reason for living. They have absolutely no reason for living, and yet you could be that voice that tells them, dude, there's a God who created you for more. There's a reason, there's always a need. There's a need. I've said to you guys, I don't know why, but the most common need that I've had is I have friends that are just messy. I have friends and people in my life that are just like, they just make some bad decisions. And a lot of people give up on them. You know, I have a friend, I told you guys of this guy, his name's Brian, but he just lives a messy life. He can't seem to get off drugs, and just a couple weeks ago he had like this massive accident where he's like driving 80 miles an hour on a street, and he runs into 4 parked cars, and he's like drunk out of his mind. And he says this to me afterwards, because I've talked to him a few times after that, but he says that when he hit the car, he just remembers that he just remembers seeing himself about to fly off the front windshield, and his legs get stuck on the steering wheel, and so he doesn't fly out. But we basically both concluded, we're like, dude, that was a guaranteed death. You fly out, brother, you're gone. You're dead. Instead, he stays there. The cops come. They put him in jail, and his wife and him are just not. They're on the verge of separation, and he has 2 little boys the age of Lucas and Mateo. So it's a hard life. And one of the things that I found in him is that I have found that I am able to help is by just listening. He has so much pain. He's endured so much when he was a child. He was abused by his own father. I mean, so much pain. And I remember telling Genesis this all the time. I said, honey, if all I do is just offer moments of comfort to this guy when he comes and he talks to me, and we let him crash on the couch, if that's all we did, and he still ends up dying, he never turns his life around, he ends up in jail forever, or his life just ends. If all I did was give him snippets, small pictures of what Jesus feels towards him, by just loving him through his messiness, I think I've done enough. I think I fulfilled what I'm here for. And I have a brother, I told you guys, I have a brother who struggles with similar things, and time again, it's always something. And I told Genesis this yesterday, we were at the camp, I said, the one thing that keeps me engaged with a brother like that, and I never feel like I just need to just ignore him, and I've heard so many people in our family just say that, like, oh, you just need to let him learn, you need to stop answering the phone calls. The one thing that doesn't allow me to do that is because I think wholeheartedly that Jesus cares about him. And so right now, I think about, we should all be thinking collectively, how do we fill a need? Because my faith story, the fact that I am forgiven of my sin, and one day I'm going to be picked up and I'm going to go to heaven, I'm never going to suffer for eternal separation from God. But what's the whole point of being here? And this is what I think. I would say it all the time. I think the church is here so that we can fill needs, because that's what God put us here for. He gave us all different abilities, all different circles of influence. You know, we speak different languages. We know different people. We have access to people. I have access to people that you will never have access to. You have access to people that I would never have access to. And I think it's for this very reason. And I think about this, and here's where I'll close. The first century, when the first century church started, I don't know if you guys know too much about Roman history, but Romans would literally, if they had a child, and the child, for whatever reason, was defected, it was sick, it was blind, they would literally just drop him out in the street. Right? And the Greeks did this too. I mean, if you guys look around at just Greek history, there's an emphasis on beauty. Have you guys ever seen those statues where like the Greeks are just like six-pack, ripped, and there was a huge emphasis on perfection of the physical aspect. Now this was a cultural thing. I don't know who made it up, but it was just a thing that they did. So the moment they would have kids that were just a bit defected, or for whatever reason they just didn't look right to them, they would literally dump them out in the street. And all throughout history we see in the first century that serious history writers, they write about it, and they're like, and they talk about that. This is why this verse is so important to me. But they talk about how there was a group of people who would make a lot of efforts to pick those kids out from the street and raise them themselves. And that group of people, according to historic records, a lot of them identified the group of people being the people that were claiming that they were following this risen Savior called Jesus. And you think about that and you're just like, wait a minute. From the beginning, there was the church always had a reason for being, and throughout history, even in later centuries, though it got messy and there was the medieval times and the church got a little unfocused. The church has always been available and always has made an effort to be on the front lines of meeting urgent needs. It always has. And it makes total sense. It makes total sense that God would establish a group of people here. If He made us in His image because He wants people for us to display who He is. And then there's needs in the world, and it happens to be that we're always, Christians historically have been known for always wanting to be on the front lines of solving issues. It makes a ton of sense. Because when there's issues, when there's needs, people are hurting. And if God cares about the hurting, then we should too. This is why I think it is extremely important that we should all of us consider what we do in life, no matter what it is that you want to do. You want to be a wrestler, you want to be a sports player. It's great. I think that the more there's many of us. I said this to Lisbeth last Sunday. It was our last Sunday. She left to Berkeley. I said to her, you know what? I'm saddened that you're leaving because we're gonna miss you. It's, you know. I said, but I'm also excited to think that here goes another person who has heard many times this, because I talk about this all the time. I think that this has to be something we adopt and we run with. I said, I'm so encouraged to think that there's another person that will join the city of Berkeley and the school that will understand this concept. That we are here on our time on earth. We are here because part of our faith story will involve God wanting us to fill a need. I said, and that's why I'm happy. I'm happy that you're gone. I'm happy that you're going, because you will have opportunities up there to walk into people's lives and encourage them, build them up, love them, be kind to them like they have not experienced yet. And I said, the more we get out there, the more we are spread out doing this kind of work, the better. The better. This is why a person like me, would never, ever give up on Christianity. Because our reason, though church could get complicated, though there could be many things that don't go right, and people are going to be mean to each other, and there's going to be hypocrite acts, and all, I get it. That's all going to be a part of it. We need to be here to try to heal that. We need to be here to try to not take a part in that. But the reason why I would never give up on Christianity, as messy as it can get, is because this is ultimately our assignment. This is why we're here. This is why we're given forgiveness graciously. This is why we're given mercy. This is why God is kind to us. This is why He fixed our biggest issue, which was sin, the brokenness of sin. It's all because He wants us to be the hands and the feet that help the needs of this broken world. This is why. And so with that, we need to understand, guys, that this whole God thing, this whole church thing, it makes sense if you view it in the lens of, oh, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. If you were to view Christianity on any other lens, if you were to view Christianity as you're just supposed to be really good, behave really good, never get into any sort of trouble, you were to think about it and be like, I mean, okay, that's cool, but if that's all God wanted us to do, then why did we fall in the first place? If all God wanted us to do was to like sing and sit in a building all day long forever, or separate ourselves from society, from like the bad parts of society, which a lot of Christian groups do, by the way. There's plenty of people that do that. They're just like, oh, you know what? This world is going to break. This world is going to be a mess. I just want to retrieve somewhere and not be a part of it. And I think part of me respects that, but part of me says, no, man, I want to be in the midst of all the chaos, in the midst of all the mess, because I believe that the God that saved me can continue saving people who are in these messes. And that's why I will forever be encouraged and be on board for doing pastoral work. It's because I get it. Just like Paul encouraged Titus to do this, our people must learn to do good by meeting the urgent needs of others. Then they will not be unproductive. You want a productive church? Find needs and fill them. This is why I think past this summer, I've been doing a lot of thinking, but past this summer, I want us to find ways, not just here, not just our English group, but as a whole church, I want us to find ways to find urgent needs. One of the things that I notice is, in this area of the city, there's a lot of old people. There's a lot of old people. It's just normal that in the suburbs or sub-cities of a large city, normally people, when they retire, they don't want all the noise, so they kind of step out. We have a lot of nursing homes in the area. And I think to myself, why should we just spend time just doing absolutely nothing, where perhaps in a nursing home, they have their needs met, but maybe someone needs a visit to just hear them out. Maybe there's an old person who's starting to have Alzheimer's and will repeat themselves over and over again. But maybe we can show up and offer some comfort by just listening to the same story over and over again. I might be like, oh my gosh, but hey, why not? Maybe there's an old person living in a house around here that can't take out the trash for themselves anymore. And so maybe their house stinks. And maybe we'll never know, but if we went around knocking and trying to find the urgent needs, maybe we would find some. And I think that as time has gone by, and Genesis and I have talked about it a lot, we really want to continue to pastor actively right now, and the kids are small, we go through stuff like that. I mean, that is honestly, some of the times, believe it or not, sometimes we're driving here, we're driving back home, and the kids are crying, and we're like, dude, why are you guys crying? Like, diapers changed. And some of those things really have made us question and think, do we really want to drive that far? Do we really want to be apart from that? But then when I think about this, I'm like, dude, so what if the kids are crying? So what if we have a headache? And I try to encourage my wife a little bit different. If we can just find urgent needs as a church and just start filling them, I think we would become a thriving group that can just fulfill God's plan, His big picture plan. This is why I'm encouraged. This is why I think, yes, I will always want to be a pastor. Though I might get other things, I might say yes to other things. My business initiatives that I'm doing, I don't know if you guys know or not, but we're opening up a coffee shop in Koreatown. But I say yes to all those things because I want to have the leeway, I want to have the ability to be able to go places at different times without worrying about the support that I need to offer for my family. So, with that being said, guys, For this week, some of you guys going back to school, some of you guys going back to your regular schedules, back in the whole swing of the fall. Guys, don't lose this. If you learn anything from your pastor, don't lose this. If I were to get hit by a bus and you would never see me again, don't lose this. Just remember, you are here because there are needs that need to be met, and God designed you and allowed you to be alive, and is giving you grace and is giving you mercy so that you can be active in displaying who He is to people. And this is it. So let's bow our heads, let's close our eyes. And for the next few months, guys, I want us to live this out together. I know you guys can do this on an individual basis. But I want us to start thinking and praying, and maybe you can message me throughout the week. Or maybe I'll message you. I want us to start thinking of ways that we can be active in this community or in the community that you live in. Maybe there's someone in the Indo church that we can find, that we can help or that we can encourage. Or maybe they know of a need that maybe us young men can go and help someone move or clean something up. I want us to be thinking, I want us to be praying. I mean, it's as simple as, God, what are the needs around here? And how can we be a part of filling them? How can we, for the last 8 months, God, it's been great. It's been fascinating. I've had a great time getting in the rhythm of teaching regularly on Sundays, God. And I am so happy that we have just a group of young dudes that show up every Sunday. God, I've been encouraged by that. I've been so happy to do that. And God, now I just think it's time to step out. The initial agreement or the initial conversation that I had before coming on here full on board and being hired by this church, my conversations were about us being active in our surroundings. And I think for the past 8 months, I've still known that. God, I just want to start doing something now. And I pray, God, that all of us will start thinking of ways, we'll start praying about ways. We'll literally start researching ways on how it is that we can fill urgent needs around here. With our time, with our talent, the fact that we're young, the fact that we're all, at least here today, we're all healthy, we're all alive, we're able to lift stuff. God, show us how can we start being your hands and your feet here in Monrovia. Or in Arcadia, where Ethan and Isa and Austin live. Or in South Pasadena, where Josh lives. God, how can we start getting our hands and feet wet with filling needs that are around us, God? If that's all we became as a church, it's just people that are always willing to help, willing to do something. God, I pray that you would give wisdom to the elders here. That how do we continue to support other missions, other churches that are unable to pull in resources like we are able to pull in resources. How do we do that? How do we continuously do that? I pray that in the midst of all this mess that we're going through in this country with racial tension, I pray that it would be the church that stands up and says, we're not going to get involved in the evil side of these things. But we are going to be active in doing good. Father, I pray that your Spirit would just awaken us, will give us a passion, a desire to do something. God, and I pray for just protection and safety and blessing over our young men, our young women here. I pray, God, that as they go back to school, God, would you protect them? Would you keep them, God? Would you preserve them? God, because they have things that they still need to do that it's going to bless others, that it's going to encourage others. And so would you keep them? Father, I pray that they would be a blessing to their parents, to their teachers, to their classmates, to their co-workers. I pray, God, that we would be light in the midst of so much darkness. If this is all we ever did as a church, if this is all they ever learned from being here on Sundays, that we were born to be light, that we were born to be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ himself. Just as the church was in the first century, God, how they would pick up kids from the street and would raise them and take care of them, all because they just thought that that was what God would do, and they were right. So let us buy into that and start doing something about it. I pray all this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.